People were literally rolling up to record stores, pounding on the door, demanding to buy the single, and it hadn't even been released yet. And so it went viral before that was even a term.
I mean, it still sounds like nothing else.
It is crazy. Also, though, that is radio DJ smoke break time, right?
Hello and welcome to another episode of 1001 Album Complaints, the show where lifelong friends, musicians, and general complainers get together to break down a classic album from the list of 1001 albums you must hear before you die. If you are familiar with the show, you already know what you're in for. But if you are new to the show, I must warn you that we are going to make fun of an album tonight. We're going to be critical, and because we feel an obligation to be true to our name, we are going to complain about this record. But rest assured that we are musicians ourselves. We've written and recorded music, and we know just how hard it is to make a truly great record. But even the best art leaves a little something to make fun of. Or a lot in the case of this album, which at the time of its release was the most expensive album ever recorded. I'm talking, of course, about the Chops debut album. Foreshadowing. I'm talking, of course, about Queen's epic fourth studio album, A Night at the Opera. You've almost certainly heard a song from this album, but we'll kick things off with a quick snippet of the opening track to give you a taste of what we've been listening to this week. The track is called Death on Two. A taste of Queen going. Let's kick it around the room for a set of tweet-length reviews of this album to introduce our panel today, and we're going to start things off with Rob.
Thanks so much, Allan. Ready to get nice and snarky here. My tweet-length review is as follows. A Night at the Opera is more ridiculous than Brian May's Forever haircut, more in-your-face than Freddie Mercury's Overbite, and ultimately more rockin' and prog-tastic than any non-Yes album I've heard all year.
All right.
I figured we'd invoke Yes at some point. Didn't know it'd be that quickly, but all right, let's kick things over to Tom.
Thank you, Allan. The way I feel about Night at the Opera is a lot like how I feel about our special guest tonight, John. Everyone says I'm supposed to like it, but I just don't.
I feel like I should have went to John first if I knew that was coming.
Yeah, well, shots fired. The listeners don't even know me yet.
Yeah, I'm just trying to poison the well ahead of time.
Excellent. Well, speaking of which, we have a very special guest who we will give a proper introduction to in a moment. But let's hear from the aforementioned John. What do you got?
A Night at the Opera is aptly named. It's just like going to a real opera. At first, you're sort of intrigued by the obvious musical talent, the beautiful voices, the undeniable artistry of it all. And then you slowly realize, wait, this is totally over the top, melodramatic, and generally incomprehensible. Whatever intricate harmony or vocal register you're trying to reach, my ears are not identifying this as pleasurable. Essentially, humans should not sound like this.
Nice.
Yeah, but at least if you go to a Night of the Opera with your wife, I hope you at least get laid after it. I don't think anybody's getting laid after subjecting their family to listen to this album.
You're just going to the wrong bar, Tom.
I actually had a coda to this intro that touches on that I wasn't going to say, but now I must. At the end of the night, when you think you might get laid just for going, you end up staring at your bedroom ceiling, interrogating your sexual identity.
There we go.
Excellent, excellent. And just to round things out here, this is Allan, and apparently Queen were in dire financial straits when they set out to record A Night at the Opera, and they felt like this was a true make or break album for them. So naturally, they did what any band who's fighting for their survival would do. They let their drummer write a song about his car.
Beautiful.
Okay. I want to take a moment here and introduce our very special guest for this episode. And although he's making his first appearance on this show, he is well steeped in the type of commentary that we subject you all to on a weekly basis. Now, if you're a longtime listener to the show, you're almost certainly familiar with this beloved musical entity that we are a part of known as the Chop, which has unfortunately unleashed a torrent of very normal concept albums about very normal topics like Arby's, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, and this very here podcast. But the origins of the Chop go back over 20 years to a startup band, and I truly mean startup, consisting of our friends Rob, Tom, and Phil, plus James, who you've heard on this podcast from time to time, ramble occasionally about synthesizers and other matters. But did you know there was a fifth guy in the original Chop? And that guy is John, and that guy is here today. John is a dear friend, a longtime friend, who has probably not listened to a second of this podcast. But in any case, John, welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, Allan. And thank you, Rob and Tom, for having me. I would like to say I'm happy to be here, but I think we all know that's not true. Very, very, very disappointed that my favorite complainers, Adam and Phil and Marty, are not here. But I am happy to be here, happy to be doing the album, and it's great to see you guys.
We all saw a moment of panic where John tried to think of Marty's name. I'll just add on to your introduction. John, welcome. You're the last piece of our Voltron friend group, if you will. I think that's safe to say. The original bass player in the Chop. He's the guy in the photo when Tom can't find a photo of Adam and just writes Adam over his face.
I did not know that.
I like, John, that you just waited a full 5 years to come to the show. I'm assuming we finally met your listenership standards.
Well, Rob, you well know that during our last in-person meeting in November, I don't know if you remember this, you challenged me to join the podcast or shamed me into never participating. And I realized you were correct. And New Year's Day, I said, this year's the year I will join the podcast if they are so kind enough to have me.
And I think there was maybe one more stipulation if Allan was the host. Y'all don't know, but Allan and John are, there's a song on this album that I think was written just about Allan and John. You're my best friend.
I think the big hesitation was we thought there would be a discontinuity in the space-time continuum if we brought yet a third bassist on to this episode at the same time. So things could get a little murky here.
I assume you're talking about me. I made my bass debut over the weekend on stage, guys.
Oh my God. We got quadruple bass attack. Hell yeah.
Turns out it's a lot easier.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Why do you think all of your laziest friends play the bass, Rob?
Okay, I'm very curious about this album. Clearly, at least parts of this album are familiar to all of us, but I'm curious, after hearing the entire album, what did you guys think in terms of general impressions?
Look, it is so much weirder than I thought it was going to be, which is a quality that I instantly like. But then I also found that it grew on me the more that I listened. I do think it was enhanced as I listened to it more after the initial shock of some of the wild variety and stuff that just seemed, straight out of the 1940s and cabaret rock or opera prog or whatever. But as I listened to it more, I liked a lot more of it. And I do think they did a pretty decent job of both a lot of experimentation and also having a layer of consistency, especially in that Queen harmony stack.
Oh, God, yeah.
I read that Freddie said that he was conservative about vocals on this album compared to previous albums, which is insane.
This album is basically harmony porn, and I'm here for it. I absolutely love it. My experience with Queen albums in the past has been that they have very high highs, but they also have some very low lows. And I thought that this album was much more consistently good. The high highs were still there, but I thought it was a very consistently good album. A lot of Queen hallmarks there. Like you said, that Freddie on Freddie harmony orgy that he does is fucking awesome. Brian May, I'm convinced that the knobs on his guitar don't actually do anything. He's got the same tone all the time. But, it really does scream, this is a Queen song. And so, I kind of am in the same boat as you, Rob. I very much appreciated it upon first listen, but upon repeat listens, I kept finding more things to love about it. I think it's a very rich album. I just want to see the list of takes that they had to do for all of these songs. There have to be so many takes.
I just want to say before anyone else goes that I do think they're a misunderstood band because of their greatest hits. they're not the band you're expecting them to be on the album if all you know them from is the greatest hits. They're so much stranger. And I like that. And so, yeah, I generally agree with what you just said, Tom.
And even within those hits, there's a lot of variation. They've got We Will Rock You, Bohemian Rhapsody, Killer Queen. None of those songs are that similar. So they've got this schizo kind of thing, even within the songs that are their most well-known songs. And I had a similar kind of vibe this week where, because I had never heard this album front to back, I just heard a few of the big hits. And I kind of felt a little bit underwhelmed at first because I think, again, I was just expecting something a little bit different. I thought it was a little bit weird and the genre hopping got to me a little bit, but the more I listened to it, it definitely grew on me. And the more I learned about the band and their production and kind of where they were at when they made this record, which it will be sort of a big part of the story that we'll tell tonight. But I came away just feeling much more like they are a band, when I used to sort of feel like it was Freddie Mercury and Brian May and then, a bunch of other assorted pieces. I came away with a lot more respect for the band, certainly.
I did not come away with the same experience. I think I started off and I actually found it kind of like off-putting and like a lot of the parts like really shrill and like hard to get through. Now, I will say the flip side of that is it is interesting. And like I was like engaged. And I definitely never would have listened to the record if it wasn't like part of this process, because I wouldn't I'm familiar with the Queen hits. And it's funny because like to what you're saying, Rob, it's like I kind of really thought I loved Queen. I was like, oh, I like Queen. Queen's awesome. I'm cool. And then I listened to this record and I was just like, oh, I don't know if I really like Queen. So I listened to News of the World as well. And I kind of felt the same way where it's like, oh, I kind of like the hits, but like the middle track when it's not Freddie Mercury and it's like not the usual cast, I actually found it off-putting and like we'll get into like the songs, but it almost felt like too much. Maybe I don't appreciate the musicality. Maybe that's what I'm not. That's like the technique. Maybe it's like lost on me.
It's not just that. I do think it's a dense album. It's a little bit challenging to get to. I suspect a lot of listeners will feel something like what you felt, and I had to kind of kin to it over time. Again, with the vocal harmony stacks and the guitarmony throughout, it's also a very great guitar record, I think. I mean, all the musicianship is good. It jumps out as interesting right away. I think that's undeniable. And ultimately, I do think it's a triumph of weird experimentation with genre and harmony. And I know we're going to get to it on the focus list, but just Bohemian Rhapsody is the most truly strange and wonderful hit song. I think it might be the oddest hit song that I could fathom.
It's the most unlikely smash hit that you can think of, yeah.
How did they do that? How did they land that plane, right? But they did.
Well, when I was thinking of Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, I'm sure, at least for me, it was Wayne's World. It was like my introduction. But now what I really would love, it's like I would love to go be there when like Star Wars first came out. How it like just like totally blew everyone's mind, just like changed the world. Like, was this that song like that when it first came on the radio where everyone just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, we'll tell some of the story about how that was released. But if you've seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, I've got a lot of problems with that movie. But in some ways, the resistance to it was real when it first came out because it is an over 6-minute song and nothing over 3 minutes was getting played on the radio back then. But it was so unique. And I think what was cool about that song, and I think the rest of the album too, which I didn't really realize until I did some of the research, was they were kind of coming at this, even though they were under the gun to make this, there was a freedom that they had knowing that they sort of had really nothing to lose when they put this out. And so the writing was a true representation of what they wanted to say and what they wanted to write in a way that you don't always get on every album. Ultimately, I think that came across for me, for sure.
The song doesn't even read as that long to me anymore. I mean, 6 minutes is not that long. Maybe I've just been hammered by all these 70s prog opuses or something, but it's not even that long.
You watched Fish play like 18 consecutive hours of music once. I think you're desensitized to time limits here.
I also think that it's a compliment to the song that I'm like, wow, I thought this song was longer because it packs so much in. I'm like, 5:55. There's no way that that's 5 minutes and 55 seconds. I thought it was a 10-minute song.
Well said. That's how I felt as well. And to give perhaps a complaint or to give credence to what John said, or maybe what some of the listeners are thinking, the whole album feels longer than its 43-minute runtime. There's a lot to take in.
Yes.
And I kind of couldn't believe it was still going. by the time you get through like Prophet Song, and I'm like,
Oh,
where's
God.
Bohemian Rhapsody hasn't even started yet? Like, how could this only be a 43-minute album?
Yeah. It's got a little bit of the White Album in it, in that there is a lot of weird experimentation and there's a lot of different styles and genres of music. I think that they generally do them pretty well, but you're right. It's not a consistent album in terms of I can sit down and be like, oh, well, I know what the next song is going to sound like because of what this song sounded like. It does really kind of hop all over the place. But I do think that some of those songs are some of the triumphs. Like, I love Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon. I think it's a great song. It's just like kind of pops in. It's like fun and witty, and it's out in a minute. You're like, all right, well, mentally that feels like it's a longer song than 1 minute and 8 seconds because you're like, oh, it's a song. Song to me is at least 3 minutes, right?
Let me add my praise to a different song and also loop back to something Allan said about them being more of a band, looking at them from the album view, which is it's very tempting to look at the band members other than Freddie singing and go, why are you removing your most powerful weapon from the band? Why are you doing that? But those songs grew on me on repeated listens too. I think the Brian May song is actually really great.
I fucking love that song.
Yeah, it's a great song. And it has to be mentioned because we do have I'll give it 3.5 bass player attack here. John Deacon's a fucking monster, man. He gets some great bass lines in there. Never flashy, kind of like understated, but like very complicated.
Yeah, well, in a band like that, I think you have to know your place. And I think that's where someone like John Deacon, it was probably not going to be a great session type of player. I'm sure he's diligent and all that, but I think it's the way that he melded in with the other guys. Even though Freddie was the out front sort of personality, Brian May and Roger Taylor still had personality, and there was still a lot of tension in the band, not in a bad way, but just musical tension in order to make shit like this. So you kind of have to fit into that, but you also have to fit in musically and know your place. And he definitely did that really well. I would agree with that.
It's commendable. They let everyone participate in the creative process. But when you get like, I'm in love with my car, is that like track 2? Come on.
Yeah. That's a little too early for that. I agree.
I agree. That was poorly sequenced. But some of it, of course, I'm sure you're going to talk about it now. It's a financial decision, right? If you're not listed as a writer on one of these songs, you're not really getting paid.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. And for that song in particular, being the B-side for Rhapsody, because that was a B-side on one of the most successful singles of all time, he got a ton more cash than everyone else on the album, which is kind of bullshit. But that's how the game goes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, because I don't know if you have this, I happen to have the LP here, and I'm sure I had listened to it, but I guess I hadn't given it a close listen. In any case, I saw in the liner notes some stuff that wasn't ported over to Wikipedia, which is Freddie is credited with vocals, and more vocals.
I did not see that.
That might be underselling it, in all honesty.
I like that. And then there's also a line right at the end of the liner notes that just says, no synthesizers, !
I heard that I don't know if this was on the liner notes for the albums that came before this, but apparently that was like a mantra for them, especially early on, because in their first album or two, I don't know if they gave themselves this description or if this was put upon them, but they sort of got this label as a blend of Zeppelin and Yes. And so when you hear that, you're like, oh, there's got to be fucking synth all over the place. And they were like, there's no synth anywhere. So
that description actually is pretty good. I hadn't really put those two. I was thinking Yes, of course, but Zeppelin is in there too, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the songs on here that we'll talk about, I don't think he's doing it intentionally, but you could have taken Freddie out and put Robert Plant on there, and I don't think I would have known the difference. So that's bleeding into here a little bit. The other thing I'll say about this record is I kept having some comparisons in my mind to, we did The Wall recently, and they're not similar at all in terms of concept or anything like that, but they are both equally ostentatious, maybe a little bit overboard and ridiculous. But what I found refreshing about this compared to The Wall was that it doesn't feel like they take themselves seriously at all on this.
100%. Yes.
They're precious about it in that they really wanted this to be opera type of record, and they were not going to budge on that. But I think there's a lot of tongue in cheek on here. I think I can envision them even laughing a lot in the studio while they put this together. And I thought that was appropriate for the material.
It's really lighthearted, and it's lighthearted, but also they're trying really, really hard. And that's a good combo.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the vein that we've been going for all of our albums lately, basically, which is like, I know you think it's a joke, but we're like really, really trying hard to make it sound good musically.
Yes, 10 songs about Arby's. We are doing it.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, you call it like a night at the opera, and there's a lot of like the harmonies, and it's over the top, and it's like ambitious like an opera, but there's really there's no theme to this record, right?
Not that I could pick up. I don't think there's any real concept.
Which is fine.
No, but that said, I think the title is apt, and I think the title is sort of paid off with the music.
Yeah, well, the title was also taken from a Marx Brothers movie, which is probably fairly
Sure.
slapstick anyway. So I guess if you're reading it literally, it's probably meant to be a little goofy.
They have another one that's also a Marx Brothers.
A Day at the Races.
A Day at the Races, yeah. Odd that they were super into the Marx Brothers. I guess that was a thing back in the 70s.
Did you guys never watch those Marx Brothers? I've seen both of those movies.
Never watched the Marx Brothers movies. Yeah.
I've not seen those. It's not on the list.
They're kind of fun, actually. Yeah, they're better than you might be thinking. Obviously, it's an older style of comedy, but there's some good humor in them.
Was that before or after you watched Three Stooges marathon?
I think it's much smarter than Three Stooges, for the record.
But it is also back in the day when they didn't have like stunt men per se, where they're like stunt safety coordinators. They were just like literally taking poor people and throwing them out of windows and shit, and being like, "Yeah, there you go, you're fine."
I think you guys are confused. The Marx Brothers are not slapstick. They're shticky, is what I would say, but they're not slapstick. It's like real fast talking kind of humor.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, again, I've never seen it, so. All right, well, let's get a little bit into the backstory of the making of this record and the band. But first, we are going to take a quick break. Okay, A Night at the Opera was Queen's fourth studio album, was released in November of 1975 by EMI in the UK and Elektra in the US. As mentioned earlier, the band consisted of Freddie Mercury on piano and lead vocals, Brian May on guitar and vocals, Roger Taylor on drums and vocals, and John Deacon on just bass. He did play Wurlitzer on one of the tunes, but the reason that vocal distinction means anything is because of how important the vocals really were to this band, and certainly to this album. And I think to reduce their contributions only to the instrument would do a disservice to them as a band and everything that they brought to their production. At this point, John Deacon was not doing vocals, but again, he was filling a great niche for them. Interestingly, though, as was alluded to earlier, each member of the band wrote at least one of the songs on this record. I'll come back to how they were formed and how they got to this point in a minute, but I think it's important to first orient this whole thing around where they were as a band at this time when they set out to make this specific record, because they were in a pretty weird spot. So they had just released and toured in support of their third album, which was called Sheer Heart Attack, which is what gave them their first real hit in the US, which was a song called Killer Queen. And at this point, they were definitely an ascending band. They were selling a good bit of records. Sheer Heart Attack was pretty successful by most accounts. They were headlining tours in the US and Japan, other parts of the world. So things were happening for them, with the exception of the fact that they were broke as a band. They had no money, and not because they blew their money, but because of a terrible deal that they had signed earlier in their career with Trident Studios in the UK. The reason that the deal was so bad for them was because what they had essentially signed into was a publishing deal, which meant that they would produce music for Trident, who would then go sell the music to record labels. And what this meant for Trident was they were taking on some of the risk of essentially paying this band, and if nobody bought the music, they were kind of shit out of luck. But that's not what happened with Queen, because of course they ended up selling a good bit of records up until this point. And so Trident was also their management group, though, which was weird at the time.
Was that a common arrangement? I don't think I've heard of that kind of arrangement where you're signed to a studio who's going to go sell your material to a label.
It was not that common, and I think at the time it suited them because it gave them access, almost unlimited access into the studio, even though for their first album they had to record at night, off-peak hours, because it was a pretty popular studio. In fact, some of the later Beatles songs were recorded with Trident, so they had like a great studio. And part of it was also the people that discovered Queen when they were making some initial demos. One of those guys had a connection to Trident. And so they were looking for a manager, and it felt like it was an arrangement that worked at the time. But I think they probably just didn't really know what they were signing up for. I think they thought like, oh, these guys know what they're doing. They'll get us out to people. We can make an album.
So wait, is it the arrangement that they would make the music for Trident and Trident would pay them for it one time, and then Trident would go and sell records and collect all of the revenue from the records?
Sort of, except that they were paying the band like a weekly salary.
Oh.
The analogy that I can think of is if you're writing for like a newspaper and all of a sudden this shit that you're writing starts making that paper millions of dollars. You can't really say, oh, hey, that feature story I just wrote generated millions of clicks. Where's my money for that? Right. So I think that's kind of what the deal was. But on top of that, when they signed with Trident, they didn't have a manager at the time. And so Trident was basically like, well, we don't really do this kind of thing, but we'll manage you until you get a record deal and until that gets all sorted out. And I think that complicated things even more.
Wait, like, is this like an intentional screwing over, or is this just no one thought anything was going to come of this?
No, I don't think it was intentional. I think Trident actually thought it was going to be temporary. And I think in their minds at first felt like they were the ones that were taking the risk on this because no one knew who the hell Queen was.
Kind of sounds like they would be. Imagine just any old band getting a salary without having any real fans or prospects.
Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly were. And they've become villains in all of this. And in fact, the song that we played at the outset of the episode, Death on Two Legs, was written specifically about these guys, these brothers that ran this agency. And it's pretty searing. They came to really hate these guys. And I think part of that was because, yes, they were taking some of that investment early on and rolling the dice on this band. But once they started to become more famous and selling records and headlining shows, they started really skimping on paying them anything more than their salary. There's even stories where Roger Taylor talks about how he would hit his drums fairly hard as a player and he would break drumsticks. And they literally told him to stop doing that because we're not going to buy you any more drumsticks. And it was starting to be shit like that. Meanwhile, though, the head of the studio was rocking up in a Rolls Royce after they made Sheer Heart Attack. And they're just sitting there thinking like, dude, we can't even buy, John Deacon couldn't even put a deposit on a house because they were basically like, no, you get your 40 pounds a week. You know, I think it's just one of those deals that worked for a little bit until they were just way too big. And I think fairly wanted out of that deal.
Well, it does sound like they are actual villains. I can see first album comes out, surprise, huge hit, and you make a ton of money off of it. Any decent human being would probably be like, how about for the next album we like reshuffle this a little bit so that it can be a little bit more even? I'm not saying they have to go full altruistic, but if you're telling me that they're literally making 40 pounds a week, which I'm going to guess adjusted for inflation is like $250 a week or something like that, like that's fucking brutal, man.
Right. Well, especially when you're coming back from Japan and you just sold out a shitload of shows and people are waiting in line to see you and sign autographs and you come back and you can't even put gas in your car. Like, I don't care who you are. That'd be fucked up.
The car you love.
Yeah, exactly.
Loves it so much.
Well, I think it's also like if in pro sports where guy signs a contract, massively outperforms the contract, and legally the team probably has no real legal incentive to rework that contract because you're underpaid. But most teams will generally say, let's rework the deal, give you something that's a little bit more fair. And I do think that the label should have done something like that.
Yeah, because there's a value to goodwill.
Yeah. They screwed themselves. They lost out.
Yeah, you could have gotten 6 Queen albums out of it or something like that. Yeah.
They didn't have Bohemian Rhapsody. It's not in the catalog.
They did end up coming to a settlement. Basically, Queen hired a lawyer to extract them from this deal. It becomes extremely contentious, but they end up working out an insanely expensive buyout agreement that basically means in order to earn their freedom, they have to crush this next album because I think they wanted something like £500,000 in the mid 70s from Queen in order to get bought out. And on top of the settlement, they also put in, I don't know if this went in perpetuity, but I think it might have, they wanted 1% of every album sold for like the rest of their career. And they sold a shitload of albums after that. So I think they still ended up perfectly fine, but they definitely had no goodwill on their side whatsoever. On top of what they owed in this settlement, in order to kind of break free from this agreement, Trident canceled a U.S. tour that was about to start, even though tickets had already been sold, venues booked, basically out of spite, because they still could have made a shit ton of money off of this. But after that agreement came out, they canceled this tour, and the tour was actually going to be one of the big ways that they helped fund this buyout that they owed. So they were kind of like fucked at this point, and they scrambled to hire a new manager. They end up going with this guy, John Reed, who happened to be Elton John's manager at the time. And his only directive to them at this point was go out and make the absolute best record you can. I'll handle everything else. And so that was the situation as they set out to make this record. And they've all stated that if this wasn't successful, then that probably would have been the end of the band at that point. So kind of high stakes. But again, at the same time, when you're kind of faced with that situation, you kind of can gamble and make the album that you want, because no guarantee it's going to work out anyway. So that's kind of what they were up against.
I don't know what this guy ended up being like as a manager, but as someone who's managing talent, managing the business, that's exactly what you want to hear from that guy. Do the thing you do the best you can, and I'll take care of everything else.
What that guy probably doesn't want to hear, though, is that, okay, we're going to make the most expensive album of all time.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't want to hear that in response.
With a 7-minute single.
Yes, exactly.
Well, again, he was Elton John's manager, so he kind of knew how things worked. He was actually even reluctant to take them on as a client just because he didn't want more than one major act that he was taking care of, but he did like Queen, so he agreed to do it.
Oh, wait a second. This guy goes to Elton John. And he's like, "Hey, I just signed a new band, Queen. You heard of this band, Queen? What does Elton John say to that?"
Well, I don't think he needed Elton John's permission.
Not that he needed his permission, but I just wonder what other bands thought of Queen. Where there's just like, is Elton John just like a big eye roll, like those fucking jokers? He's signing them, or is he like, oh my god, those kids are awesome?
He's got to feel lightly like it's competition. It's another flamboyant piano playing frontman. I know they're not exactly in the same genre, but
yeah, he was like, listen, like I got a lot of experience dealing with like just barely closeted gay frontmen here. So like I'm the manager for you.
Well, I think John Reed was actually gay himself, which at the time being out was not at all safe or popular. In fact, there's a story that he tells in one of the documentaries that I watched, John Reed, where he says the first time he met Freddie, and Freddie hadn't even come out to the band yet by that point, and he says something to the effect of, "Hey, if you're going to work with us, I think you should just know that I'm gay." And John Reed's like, "Me too." So the other thing about Elton John too that I did come across is, I don't know if he objected to them or to this thing, but John Reed did say when he wanted to release Bohemian Rhapsody, he went to Elton John and was basically just like, "What do you think of this?" Not for his permission, but like, these guys want to release like a 6-minute single. What do you think? And he was like, "This song's great, but these guys are fucking stupid if they try to put this out as a single." So I think that was also the sentiment at the time as well. Let's talk a little bit about how they got to this point to begin with in terms of the origins of the band. And I should say this is one of 3 albums they have on the list. So this is not going to be like the definitive Queen biography or Freddie Mercury biography. You know, I got to spread that content out, if I'm being honest. Let's face it. We'll do a little bit of a walkthrough here. But the origins of the band, they go all the way back to 1965 at the Hampton School in London, which was a pretty well-to-do private school in London. And it was at this school where a high school student and guitar player named Brian May started a band with his classmate, a kid named Tim Staffel. They called their band creatively 1984, which was based, of course, on the Orwell novel. We're talking high school band names here. Now, Brian May didn't just play guitar. He played on a guitar that he and his dad built by hand. So him and his dad spent a year and a half basically hand building this guitar. Tom, you mentioned earlier you weren't sure if his guitar had like a tone knob on it. Not only did it have a tone knob, it had several knobs. It had many pickups. I don't know if his dad was some kind of engineer, but they spent a few years making this. Apparently they carved the neck from a 100-year-old fireplace mantle. So this neck has been pretty legendary. He calls it the Red Special, and this is the same guitar that he has played for his entire career. He still plays it now, even though he might have like some kind of replica at this point, just because the guitar is so old.
I mean, of course, dude. That's hell of a story. That's like the lightning hitting the tree and Robert Redford makes the baseball bat.
The Thunder Bat, yeah.
By the way, you cannot just walk into that guitar project without foreknowledge. Let me tell you.
Yeah, like fret spacing is a big thing that involves lots of math and whatnot. That's going to be, you're going to need specialized equipment too. You're not just like hammer and nailing that shit, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't just keep tinkering until it works. It's not going to go well.
No, and he actually wrote a book about the guitar, right? So if you want to learn more about exactly how the guitar was made, where the dots are on the fretboard.
And yet not a song about how he wants to fuck it.
Well, yet he's still playing, so give it time. There's also the Wikipedia page for this guitar is almost as long as Brian May's Wikipedia page too, by the way. So,
you know, I think we might have reached the edge of my musical nerdery because I have no desire to go and read that book or that Wikipedia page. I'm happy with your summary, and yeah, that's all I needed.
He does have great tone for sure, but I know it's also partly what he's using, pushing the guitar through, right? He uses like a treble booster. We don't need to go too far down this road, but he does have iconic guitar tone for sure.
He does. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I won't get too, since Phil's not here, I'm not going to get too into the weeds on guitar tone. But one of the big factors in getting his studio tone, especially from the second album and beyond, was his guitar run through what's called the Deaky amp, which was an amp that John Deacon actually fabricated. So these guys are all basically huge nerds. Like, I think most people are probably aware Brian May has like a PhD in astrophysics. These are heady dudes.
Didn't I also hear that even though Deacon made that amp and then Brian May made it popular, that now some amp company like sells a Brian May, like a version of that amp and calls it the Brian May amp, even then John Deacon gets no credit.
I heard about the Brian May amp, and they did not mention John Deacon, which is typical bass player overlooking.
Yeah, it's Vox is the company that does it. But apparently he found like some kind of circuit board in a dumpster and attached it to like a bookcase speaker that he had. And between that, his guitar, and like a treble booster, it just gave it this insanely orchestral kind of sound that it was really hard to create any other way. So I think that's a big part of his tone.
Whenever I hear found in a dumpster, I'm always like, describe to me the 20 minutes before you got into that dumpster. Like, what is your life going? What's going on in your life at that point where you're just like, random electronics in a dumpster? Let's figure out what this does.
That's a good point, because there's no chance that circuit board's labeled. It's just green.
Yeah, it's got wires sticking off of it, and he's like, whoa, yeah.
Did I ask a question to you three? If you heard a non-popular Brian May song, but his like classic tone, would you be able to like identify it like in the same way as like Jimmy Page, obviously like Jimi Hendrix, like the other like obvious, like you hear it, you're like, I know exactly who that is immediately.
As the guitar player here, I'll speak up and say I put him below Hendrix and below Santana on the recognizability scale, and probably above Jimmy Page. I'd like to believe the answer is yes. I'm not 100% sure, in the same way I am with Santana and Jimi Hendrix, but I think he's pretty high up there.
I would agree with that. And I think part of it is also certainly like on a recording and the way he stacked his guitar harmonies, like the recording techniques that he used, like just the overdubs and the layering and the stacking. I think he has a pretty definitive.
And let me be clear, that's a pretty short list. You could put Eddie Van Halen on the list above him too, but there's not that many more options.
I mean, that's like the Mount Rushmore. If you can do that.
Yeah, as much as I talked on him for like never changing his tone up, like there are definitely some benefits to that. He does have a fucking great tone. It's so stabby. Doesn't fit in every song, that sort of like high stab guitar that he gets with a lot of treble boost on it, but when it works, there's nothing else that'll do the job.
Indeed.
When I was a kid, I always thought Brian May and Mike Campbell were the same person. I would always confuse the two.
Yeah, I can see that.
Not because of their guitar tone, obviously because of their perms. But.
No, yeah, I was going to say it's because of the minor league hockey haircut that they both have.
Right?
All right. He's got this like custom guitar. He's a heady dude. He starts this band with his classmate. They kick around London for a year. They play actually a good bit for a high school band. They're opening for well-known bands that are coming through London. But ultimately they disbanded when Tim Staffel, the other guy, left to go to art school, and May went to study astrophysics at the Imperial College in London. But they quickly end up reconnecting once they both get to college, and they form a prog rock band called Smile with Staffel on bass and vocals, and May on guitar. They advertise for a drummer to kind of complete the trio, which gets the attention of a dental student. See, these are not the kind of bandmates I played with in college. I played with like bum-ass English majors. These guys are like, oh, we need a dental student. We need engineers. We need these guys.
Something tells me all of their practices didn't start with everybody smoking their own personal joint before they started playing.
There was a distinct lack of drug use in the research that I did for this record. Although I will say what I found funniest in doing the research was, even though there weren't a lot of drugs, every live performance that Freddie Mercury was playing at a piano, he had like 6 beers on the piano. Have you noticed that?
There we go. I did not notice that.
Watch, he does Somebody to Love. He does all these, Bohemian Rhapsody, even Live Aid. There's like, seriously, like 8 beers on the piano, and he plays for like 18 minutes.
Good for him. I mean, not good for him. It's terrible for him.
He's in pretty good shape. 8 beers a night.
Dude was moving, man. He was burning calories out there. So they get the attention of a dental student who ended up being Roger Taylor. He actually auditioned on bongos because he didn't have a drum kit with him.
Whoa. That was how our first drummer auditioned for the Chop, too.
The drummer being Tom?
No.
No, the guy before Tom, or a guy before Tom. John must remember because it was in our garage. And this guy came over and he said bongos.
Did he carve the bongos himself from like an old stump in the backyard?
No, sadly, no. Found him in a dumpster, though.
Somehow he gets the job, though, and they move this project forward as a trio. They also get some good traction. They play a good amount of gigs in and around London. During this time, one of Roger Taylor's musician friends starts to hang out with the band a lot, kind of like a hanger-on, but someone who ingratiates himself with the band, constantly giving them advice on what they should do, what kind of music they should make, how they should dress, all that sort of thing. The guy's name is Farrokh Balsara, who was born in Zanzibar to the parents of Indian descent. Sort of a shy guy, but very confident, very opinionated. And again, over time, just sort of ingratiates himself with the band and with this project.
None of the things that you're saying sound like they would be ingratiating to me. Here's what you're doing wrong. Here's how you should play your songs. You should dress differently. I'd be like, fuck you. Where the fuck are you, man?
Well, if you've heard Brian May talk, he seems pretty chill. I think he's kind of down for whatever. But I think it was much more in the spirit of, I like you guys. What if you guys did this sort of thing? But yeah, interesting dynamic nonetheless. This band plays for about 2 years or so. And then in 1970, Tim Staffel decides he wants to do something else. He wants a different project. So he leaves Smile to join a different band called, you ready for this? Humpy Bong.
Humpy Bong?
I swear to God, that's the name of the band that he left Smile to join.
Wow. Is that like a Britishism or something like that? It's like, oh, that's what we call bullfrogs. They're humpy bongs, you know? Like
I went too far down the rabbit hole. I didn't look at the origins of Humpy Bong. But so that basically ends the band and it leaves them without a singer or a bassist. But Roger's hanger-on friend, Farrokh, kind of rallies Brian and Roger to continue playing because he likes the band. And he says, hey, you guys should keep playing, but you should bring me in as the lead singer. And they figure, like, what the hell? Let's do it. So Farrokh proposes a few changes to the situation. One is that he's going to officially change his name, of course, to Freddie Mercury. The other is that they have to go out with a new name, and that name is, of course, Queen.
Freddie comes to the band and insists that they change the name of the band to Queen.
Well, I think they were coming out with new material as well. I don't think they were just picking up the pieces.
No, I'm just curious. Because he brought the name to the table and then proceeds to not come out to them for like 5 years or something like that. Like nobody picked up on that.
I think they knew, but like,
Okay.
I think like 5 years before that, it was probably not even like legal to be gay in England.
I also think that word just means something different now than it meant then. And it certainly means something different in England than it means here in America. It just has a different set of connotations, right?
I guess.
Can we just say that Freddie Mercury is an awesome stage name? Like, great job. Great idea.
Fucking amazing name.
Tremendous.
Yes. Mr. Fahrenheit himself. It's fucking awesome.
But it wasn't even just a stage name. He changed his actual name to that. I think his family was a little disappointed, and I think he came from sort of traditional Indian family that probably was not down with, they supported him musically, but I think that was a big shock to him and his family. But yeah, clearly a good move for him.
He's let down Ahura Mazda, There's a little Zoroastrian reference there, right?
Going over my head, man.
They're not technically monotheism, but it's like one of the early religions that had like a light god and a dark god, and that's it. So it's like, good God, evil God. It's kind of very much mirrored what Christianity later became with like God and the devil type of thing.
I've heard of Zoroastrianism. I know it was a religion and an ancient one, but you just cited some of their lore.
The tenets. Yeah, I've already exhausted my research at this point, so I'm going to sit back and let you guys discuss the religion aspect of it.
Well, pretty ballsy, Freddie Mercury, to kind of come in, and he sounds like he has a vision. He like joins the band and immediately changes its course. And also like credit though to the rest of the bandmates to not have the ego about it. See the guy with the vision and be like, this guy seems to know what he's talking about.
Well, you said he was shy, but he also is like, well, I also have a 5-octave vocal range, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. He was shy, but he was confident and kind of knew what he wanted to do. And the other thing that I did not really realize about him and his dynamic with the band until doing this research is clearly he's a musical force and one of the all-time vocalists. He's got an insane range, but I never realized that he was actually such a fundamentally strong musician. He was a piano player, not like classically trained, but was comfortable on piano, had great rhythm, had great feel. And I had kind of always lumped him into, inaccurately, the Roger Daltrey type of, okay, you're the singer, you're the one that's out there making moves, but really it's the other guys in the background that are pushing the music forward. But he wrote most of their music probably, and I just didn't really realize that early on.
To be this good of a vocalist, even, I mean, there's great piano on this record as well, but to be this good of a vocalist and to compose, we're going to get into it when we get to Bohemian Rhapsody, you gotta be musical, dude. There is a lot going on there.
Yeah, honestly, in Prophet Song, I think Prophet Song might actually be a more impressive vocal accomplishment, because the way that he's like moving through the notes so that he knows that all three notes that are going to be played, because it's got the looping of the original note that he sang, he's just like running in and out of these chords, and it's fucking crazy. They all sound good together. That's insanely hard to do. You have to have crazy musical theory to be able to do that.
I don't even know if it's theory, but it's definitely instincts. And part of what was challenging though about doing this album, specifically that song that you mentioned and Bohemian Rhapsody, was that because there were so many overdubs and because there were so many moving parts, oftentimes like the other guys would come into the studio and they would just be asked to play this line, but it was decontextualized from the rest of the song. So oftentimes they would come in, they would play a part, but they had no idea where it was going, what it was in relation to. And, Freddie kind of just had this roadmap in his head that he just sort of pull all together once he had the pieces in place.
Wild.
Yeah, definitely a force of nature for sure. So they've got Queen lined up, except for the bass player. They cycle through a few guys until they come across an electrical engineering student who ends up being John Deacon, slots in perfectly with the rest of the band and completes their core lineup.
Was he rummaging through the dumpster behind their practice space or something like that? Leaned out the back.
This locks in their lineup, which brings us to our favorite segment on the show, which is By the Numbers.
Yeah, there we go.
Wait, this is your favorite?
Couldn't you tell by the way he announced it?
With such gusto and confidence.
He said it very clearly, and then you guys all cheered. I got it. All clues point towards it is your favorite. Please continue, Allan.
I'm trying to up my excitement level just for Tom's benefit. All right, the first number I'm going to throw out is the number 20, which is how many consecutive years that Queen played together with this exact core lineup of Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon, which I've always found impressive, especially for a band that was this big and had so many strong personalities. And I think if Freddie hadn't died in 91, they probably would have kept going with this lineup. There wasn't a ton of drama. They were a strong unit, and I always found that impressive.
Well, part of it's what we talked about in General Impressions, which is giving all of them a writing credit on the albums.
Yeah.
Like, that is the kind of stuff that breaks up bands, is when some guys are making one amount and other guys are making way, way, way more, and you're having a tour with those guys.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the other thing I think also is no drug problems. You mentioned that there's no serious drug problems. That's another one that really gets bands. Your drummer gets addicted to heroin or something like that, and like, yeah, that's not a recipe for success. But It also does sound like, John, I think you might have made this point, like there doesn't sound like there was a ton of musical ego in the band. Sounds like Freddie be like, I have a vision for the song, and the rest of the members of the band be like, great, what can I do to help? Or, John Deacon be like, I wrote this song, and everyone else is like, great, let's pitch in and help to make it happen. That's really not common.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes like the balance, because Freddie is like the dominant force, and like everyone knows it. Like he's like the most prominent face of the band. And so how he interacts with the rest of the band members is like what's going to set like that tone. And it sounds like he had grace about it. And he sounds like a really charming. Whenever you read anything about it, it sounds like he was more than anything. He was like super charming.
Yeah.
And like a testament to like that. It's like the other band members to kind of recognize him as like probably like the engine that's like driving this. But there's enough room for me to like contribute.
Perhaps it's obvious, but we should point out that something like that is how all bands start. I mean, if you're friends, right? Which is fairly egalitarian. Hey, you bring a song. It's our job to help you make it better. Maybe it becomes great. Maybe it doesn't, but we're all kind of trying in a semi-egoless way. The challenge is when you add fame, when you add notoriety, there's a lot of people, guaranteed, even people who call themselves friends, who are in Freddie Mercury's ear going, you're the guy. You're the only guy that matters, in fact. You should probably do a solo project. Why are you even doing anything with these guys?
Yeah, and there definitely was that. And back to the movie, the Bohemian Rhapsody biopic that came out a few years ago, I think did a big disservice to Freddie and his dynamic with the band, where they went for that stereotype, the cliche that you just talked about, Rob, of this out of control, big personality who thinks he's better than the band, and they resent him for going solo, and all that shit was mostly bullshit. Freddie did cut a solo album that was not very well received, but they were supportive. I think they were doing their own shit on the side as well, and they loved him too. That's the other thing is, I always had the impression that it was sort of us versus them, but they had an immense respect for him, so much so that when he died, John Deacon basically went into like exile. And since then, he has not played music. He doesn't do interviews. He literally just took his ball and went home. And although Brian May did say, yeah, we don't talk to him much, but he keeps a keen eye on the money. Whenever we do any of that stuff, he's like, hey.
Yeah, as he should.
So the next number I'm going to throw out is 180, which is the estimated number of vocal overdubs on Bohemian Rhapsody alone.
Ooh. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they did so many overdubs on this album that Brian May talks about how they wore the physical tape down so much that if you held it up to the light, you could almost see through the tape. That's how many overdubs and bounces, and then overdubs of bounces, which was really the only way that they could make this back in the day.
Are you going to talk about the stack itself? Because I did some research on that.
Well, I know that they each occupied like a certain range, but they would make their own chords sort of individually, and they would stack 3 upon 3.
Yeah, what I read was they were really into triple tracking, which now I want to try it with you, Tom, just for fun. And what that means is basically Freddie would do 3 takes of a single note, and then the other guys would each do 3 takes of the same note, and then they do that for the harmony note, and then they do that for the next harmony note.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the music video actually portrays this really well when it shows the like 50 Freddie Mercurys cascading down. That's definitely how they did that. Something else I also found interesting about the Freddie, and especially his doubling that he did, was that he was so precise in his vocal delivery. This is what Brian May was saying, that when he did his own doubles, he was so accurate to the one before that they would go like out of phase with each other. Like it was almost like you were stacking the same recording on top of it, which if you did that would sound weird, but because doubling, there's slight differences in the way the human will do it the second time. But he was just so good that they had problems with some of his own shit going out of phase with itself.
That's insanity. I do want to get back to the 180 vocal takes. And just for everyone out there who has never had to experience anything like this, you're recording to a piece of 2-inch tape in a pre-digital era. The information management to be able to keep track of 180 separate takes and where they are, what track they're on, what goes with what, and how to mix it together is a fucking nightmare. I cannot believe that they had to have like entire walls of writing of just managing that.
And they must have paused in between and dumped it to new tapes and done all this stuff so that they didn't completely kill the tape. Or because they only have so many tracks to work with, of course, as well.
They were using a 24-track recorder, and so they would, as much as possible, bounce what they recorded so that they can then take that one track that was the bounce of the 30 or 40 they had done before that, and then they would combine that with the other bounce, and that's what was causing all that degradation of the tape after a while. But what's also hard about that is not a problem now with digital recording is you have to commit to those sounds. Like once you do that bounce, you can't edit those initial tracks anymore. So if you get too far down the path and you don't like what you're hearing, you're kind of fucked at that point.
You find a bad note, you got to start all over again. And that's one of the things, especially when you're stacking harmonies, sometimes it's not apparent that there's a bad note in there until you get like voice number 5. And then you're like, holy shit, voice number 2 had a bad note in there. And everything that's built on top of that, it's like putting like a book under a brick wall. By the time you get to the top of that brick wall, it's such a gigantic variance from where it should be from just this tiny little thing in the foundation. So I have problems with this in the digital age. I can't imagine doing it in the completely analog age.
How does it work, like mechanically? Like when you're doing 108 vocal tracks, like how often are they stopping and going, okay, let's listen?
In some cases, the take was 1 Galileo, like that would be 1, and then you multiply that by 20.
Definitely after you record something and you need it to fit with other things, you're going to listen very carefully, possibly multiple times, to avoid the problem that Tom just talked about, because you're going to commit to it. In practice, anytime you're doing a background harmony, you'll then you'll listen back and you'll solo everything but that. Then you'll listen back and maybe solo everything but that and the thing it's supposed to go with, or the things it's supposed to go with. And you might have to do that multiple times to suss out if it's correct or not.
And also the other thing is that we're talking about 180 keeper vocal takes. So there was a lot of, you hit the note, you listen back in your headphones, and you're like, that's not it. Do it again. That's not it. Do it again. That's not it. Before you even get to let's listen to it in context, like you're probably maybe doing 4 or 5 takes of just that one note, you know?
And even if they're excellent at hitting their notes with a ton of consistency, which is unlikely, but they could be just amazing. Freddie's probably really, really great at it, like you said. The other thing is, how do I approach the note? Because they do a lot of very interesting, like, swelling of notes and stuff that comes through in the performance and wouldn't necessarily be labeled as inaccurate. But again, if you have to have a vision of going, this is how I want it to sound. I want to hit it from my throat. I want to hit it from my chest. I want to hit it from my nose, whatever it might be, depending on what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, and a guy like Freddie Mercury, whose voice easily overpowers almost everything else on the tape, when he's doing backgrounds, has to have a different approach to it. He could probably belt every note, but he's like, this isn't a belter. Maybe does a belting take, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, let's pull it back a little bit. So it's a massively time-consuming process, just insanely time-consuming and demoralizing. At least my experience with it has been, it's very demoralizing.
Especially when you're fighting for your life. It's like, we need that 180th take. Let's go. Speaking of takes, though, not to get too much into this, but the manner in which they recorded this is almost as important as I think the songs themselves. Even though they had all these overdubs, the backing tracks were still live one take, though, which is not as much of a high wire act if you are a dialed in live band. But I also found that interesting where they weren't overdubbing the music. They would overdub the guitar solo, but like the raw backing tracks were played live.
And there's a fair amount of guitar harmony as well. Obviously, that would have to be overdubbed since you only have one guitar player. But yeah.
But they weren't like putting the drummer in by himself.
Right.
They were doing all that shit live. They even had to, because they would run out of tracks and channels to run, they would sometimes have to run the guitar and the vocal on the same track. So that was an additional thing that they had to manage.
Well, and to be fair to them, it does sound like a band. Like, it doesn't feel like an isolated, sterile thing.
Yeah.
It feels like lively. Even though there was a lot of surgery done, there's definitely an organic feel to it.
I disagree a little bit on a Prophet song, which I know we're going to talk about.
I was specifically referring to the general groove of the band.
God.
And you can create that live band sound by stacking track on track on track. Just listen to some of the old Stevie Wonder records where he's literally playing every instrument. It sounds like a band. You know, it can be done, but it's remarkably tough.
Yeah, but you're like, the bar is Stevie Wonder. That's a pretty fucking high bar. You know?
Okay. Couple more numbers to throw at you here. Next number is 3 billion, which is the number of Spotify streams for Bohemian Rhapsody.
Feels low. I got to tell you, that feels a little low.
It is lower than Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls somehow.
That's what I'm talking about, right?
But generally, that space on Spotify, if you look at their list, that's all like Ed Sheeran. That's like all the new people that kids are listening to right now.
For a song that came out 50 years ago, it's pretty good. And if they could add up all the karaoke renditions, I'm sure you'd get another 30 billion in there.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, 3 billion is pretty fucking good. And something that I found even crazier than that was the number 8, which is the number of Queen songs that have over 1 billion streams, which might not sound that impressive, but I went and did a little bit of comparison. So Stairway to Heaven is Zeppelin's only song that has more than 1 billion streams, and that only comes in at 1.2. Here Comes the Sun is the only Beatles song that has more than 1 billion. That comes in at 1.8.
Damn.
And I think the Beatles, they might have not been on Spotify for a little bit, so who knows what's happening with those numbers.
Good context, though.
But 3 billion for Rhapsody, and their top 8 songs have over 1 billion.
Wait. Do we know the 8?
I got to take a guess. One's Another One Bites the Dust. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, We Will Rock You. That's 2.
We Are the Champions.
Yep.
Killer Queen, is that in there?
Yep. Killer Queen's in there.
Fat Bottom Girls. If Fat Bottom Girls is not in here, I'm writing to Spotify right now.
It is not, but I fucking love that song. Here, I'll give you a hint to one of the songs that's on there. Vanilla Ice.
Oh, Under Pressure. Yeah. It's fucking
Yes, that is on there.
Somebody to Love.
That's on there. And there's one that you guys haven't got yet. Having a good time, having a good time.
Oh, that's one of them? Okay, fuck
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I thought of that as not a deep cut, but definitely one of their lesser hits in terms of popularity. One of my favorites.
That's number 2 for them in streams.
No kidding.
2.6 billion.
I think it must have had a resurgence in the last decade, because I feel like because the Chop played that one time, right? Didn't we?
That might have been the resurgence.
Yeah, that must have been it. But I just feel like at the time, it wasn't considered like one of their big hits.
Yeah, I mean, all it takes is being in a movie, and that can kind of juice these numbers. But I found that pretty impressive. But also not just because of the numbers, but of the bands from this era, they've endured in a way. Zeppelin's not touching these streaming numbers, so I think that was pretty cool.
Partly their longevity, but it's partly those songs you listed are in some different genres. There's disco, there's stadium rock, there's torch songs. You know, you got a few different things.
Yeah, I mean, We Are the Champions is getting played
Exactly.
in perpetuity. Yeah. All right, last number here. Somehow we're still in by the numbers. Last number here is 40,000, which is how many pounds it cost to record this record back then, which adjusted for inflation, converted to USD, is about 600 grand. So to give you an idea, that's about how much it costs to record this album. And with all the shit we talked about earlier, it's no surprise, really.
There's been some inflation in album costs, right? Because that can't even be anywhere close to the top 20 in terms of most expensive albums of all time now, right?
I mean, the Chronic probably spent that much on weed. So there you have it. Okay, let's get back to the story here. I'll talk a little bit about their journey, and then we'll get into some songs shortly. So they've got this lineup dialed in with John Deacon joining the band. They start to find this sound that's, again, a mix of hard rock and metal with prog, sort of that Zeppelin meets Yes hybrid. They kick around early on for about 2 years. They make a couple demos, and in the process of making those demos is when they get the attention of a couple producers, John Anthony and Roy Thomas Baker, who are the ones that end up pitching them to a few labels. That's how they get connected to Trident, who took them on as clients in a management deal. But again, there's no guarantee that they would even find a label to promote this, but they still go into the studio. Part of this deal was, again, they could use as much studio time as they wanted as long as they did it at night. So they basically recorded their first album in the middle of the night, in between when, the real bands were, coming in and out of the studio. They end up pushing out a self-titled debut. They initially try to promote it themselves, but it does eventually get picked up by EMI. And even though their debut does get some solid critical praise, it does not sell well at all. In fact, Brian May tells a story where when it first came out, he would go around to different record stores in London asking the cashiers like, oh, how's the Queen record doing? And they were like, what? We don't even carry that here. So not a huge success, even though the critics were kind of digging it a little bit. Nonetheless, they finish this album and they get a chance to go back into the studio to record their follow-up album, very creatively titled Queen 2. And this time they get to work during normal hours and they have much more access to like the full capabilities of the studio. And they kind of go nuts and they get much weirder than their first album. They don't go as nuts as this record in terms of pulling out all the stops in the studio, but it is where they start to solidify what will become their signature sound. And, specifically Brian May's unique orchestral guitar sound, which had that highly layered stacked guitar harmonies. That's when they start to kind of put this whole thing together.
So look, I hate to say it, but Led Zeppelin took over the numbers thing. They shouldn't have done Queen 2. That was a bad call.
Yeah.
Once Led Zeppelin comes out with Led Zeppelin 2, it's over. They own it.
It's like George Foreman naming all of his kids George. You got to put a stop to this. This is madness.
Just like that.
For a band that was this creative, Queen 2 could have done better. Interestingly, though, it does decent on the charts. It does hit number 5 on the UK charts, but it is not very well received critically. In fact, the much vaunted Winnipeg Free Press, while praising the band's debut album, described Queen 2 as a, quote, overproduced monstrosity. But it is now considered, if you are a Queen deep cut type of person, it's sort of a cult favorite. So real Queen heads point to Queen 2 as like quintessential, but it is weird. It is weird.
It's on the list too, right?
It is on the list. It's on the list as well as the next album that they recorded after Queen 2, which thankfully was not titled Queen 3, was titled Sheer Heart Attack in 1974. And that was at a point where they started to kind of rein things in a little bit. They did start to do some of the genre hopping that they do in Night at the Opera, but they started getting away from the weird kind of prog stuff that they were doing before. I think they realized like people might like this if we don't do the prog rock thing.
That's probably the one I knew best before this week, and it's not that dissimilar to this. And I mean, if you think of this as weird prog, it's in that Led Zeppelin meets Yes vein for sure. Brighton Rock is on that one.
Yeah. I like Sheer Heart Attack, but I do think that I think it's more uneven than this album personally.
Fair enough, yeah.
But I would also like to point out that Queen 2 and Sheer Heart Attack came out 8 months apart, which that's fucking impressive to be able to put out that much material in that short of a period of time and have them both be vaunted as essential. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. Again, no drug problems. I think that's got a big thing to do with it. No drug problems.
Probably increased productivity a little bit. Yeah. So that is what started steering them and putting them on the path, though, towards being a much more commercially viable type of band. That's the album that had Killer Queen on it. And, Roger Taylor was talking about this album and he's like, look, we realized the easiest way to get a hit album was to have a hit single that has some musical validity, which seems pretty self-explanatory, but I think the musical validity part actually makes some sense. It's like, hey, this can sound good, but also have some heft to it. That worked for them, except they were broke after this, and that is what sort of brought us to the point of making this record. That's where a lot of the kind of tension and pressure came from. Back to this directive from their new manager, John Reed, who says, make the best album you can. At this point, they feel unleashed really to make something new and different. And, Freddie is exploding with ideas and this idea that he wants to make an opera-themed record. He wants to take full advantage of all the recording techniques that were available. He worked with Roy Thomas Baker, who had sort of discovered them earlier on. He was the main producer, worked with an engineer named Mike Stone to help kind of put all this stuff together. And they just went for it. They recorded at 7 different studios. Again, the label was very famously hesitant about releasing Bohemian Rhapsody as the lead singer because it was over 6 minutes long.
I just remembered, I recognized Roy Thomas Baker. He produced that first Cars record
Yes.
that we fawned over. Also has that kind of pristine harmony stack element to it.
Yeah, well done. And Mike Stone, too, gets a lot of credit for a lot of the sound engineering and helping put this stuff together. Interestingly enough, though, even though once Bohemian Rhapsody was released to the world, it was an immediate success. It wasn't until an English radio DJ, I'm sure our English fans are going to kill me for not having known who this guy was, but a DJ and comedian, Kenny Everett. You guys ever heard of this guy?
Yeah, of course. Kenny Everett.
I thought for a second you were going to say John Peel, and then the whole system would blow up.
I don't want to do that to you guys. So this guy, Kenny Everett, he was somehow connected either to the band or to the studio, and he somehow got his hands on the demo, or maybe Freddie gave it to him, I'm not quite sure. But he had a radio show and he loved Bohemian Rhapsody so much that before it was even released, he went on his radio show and he would start playing little bits of the song at a time to tease the audience about this new weird Queen song. And then finally, in one weekend, he played the whole song in its entirety 14 times in 2 days. And it created such a groundswell that people were literally rolling up to record stores, pounding on the door, demanding to buy the single. And it hadn't even been released yet. And so it went viral before that was even a term.
I mean, it still sounds like nothing else.
It is crazy. Also, though, that is radio DJ smoke break time. Right? Drop the needle on that. You're like, I'll be back in a couple. Yeah, I'm just going to go pop outside for a minute. I'll be right back.
You can get a lot done in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Good song. Well, that's what I was talking about earlier when it's like, this is what, like, when Star Wars came out, where everyone just kind of lost their minds for a minute. And just was like, holy shit, what is this?
Yeah. The thing that I don't know, I don't think that I'm going to get an answer for it on this show, because I don't think it actually happened, was like, after Star Wars came out, everybody made a shitty Star Wars clone within the next 3 years. Nobody made a shitty Bohemian Rhapsody clone, right?
You ever heard of Mr. Roboto? No. I mean, who's going to try this? This is not, it's clear to genius. And here we are. We're not doing a ton of complaining, I guess, about this record, but it's such a singular song that...
Oh, we're going to get there.
Yeah. We will certainly get there.
We'll get there.
Well, speaking of which, what do you guys say we get into some of these songs here? Let's touch on the aforementioned I'm in Love with My Car.
All right, it's my focus list low point. It's way too early in the album for this bullshit. Without Freddie, the band is in danger of sounding like every other hard rocking band of the 1970s. I think that's part of what's going on here. Now, that said, my actual low point is a different song where they sound like every other 70s band called Sweet Lady, where Freddie is singing.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about this is that Roger Taylor in any other band would be the best singer in the band. Like, he's got a surprisingly good voice.
Yeah, he's not bad.
Well, he's the one that's doing all the high, Bohemian Rhapsody specifically. Well, in all the songs, he's the high guy. It's basically like he's the high, Brian May's low, and Freddie is all ranges of the middle and then some. And I remember thinking, oh man, it would be really cool to hear what Roger Taylor would sound like as a lead singer, because I knew how great he was in these high parts. And if this is what it would be, I don't know. I think he delivers, but it's a little too fake Rod Stewart or something for me.
A lot of Rod Stewart going on, yeah.
Or Roger Daltrey or something. But Tom's right. He could be a lead singer in another worse band.
Yeah, in a run-of-the-mill band.
Yeah. This song for me, it's not a terrible song, but I think that's sort of the problem, is that it's just there. I think it's corny as hell. I do like that they're not taking themselves seriously. It's kind of a joke, like a running joke within the band.
They maybe should have taken themselves a little bit more seriously on this song.
Isn't it half-assed? I think that's the danger. If you're going to make the joke, you got to commit. how much time do they spend on this? How many vocal tracks are on this one? Like, I don't, considering the level of effort into the other songs, this one does just seem so.
The lyrics also feel underwritten. When I'm in overdrive, don't have to listen to no run-of-the-mill talk jive.
Here's the thing. It's not even his car. It's his roadie's car. He's not even writing about his own fucking car.
He couldn't afford a car. They were fucking broke, man.
Yeah, I guess you can't write a song, I'm in love with the bus. That's probably a much shittier song.
Didn't the rest of the band actually think this was a joke when first proposed? Isn't that part of the lore?
Maybe he was like, listen, guys, this is all I got, and I need to get a writing credit. All right, so please just let me have this one.
I get that part, but Allan alluded to it, right? This ended up being the B-side on the first single, which is Bohemian Rhapsody. And ultimately, I think, didn't the band fight against that?
Yeah, I don't know how true this is or where these stories come from, but there's a story that Roger Taylor was so fond of the song that he locked himself in a closet and refused to come out until they agreed that it would be the B-side to Bohemian Rhapsody. That seems a little overblown to me, but it was the B-side, and it inadvertently led to this song becoming one of the highest grossing songs of all time, strictly on the back of Bohemian Rhapsody.
So you're telling me that for a very brief period of time, they had 2 closeted members? One more thing. All right. This is something that has shown up on so many fucking occasions on the albums on this list. I don't need car sounds on your song about cars. I get it. You don't have to walk me all the way down the fucking line. I understand it's about a car. Why do I need engine sounds in the fucking song about a car? It's so fucking hackneyed. It pisses me off every time.
Yeah, it's overdone. And credit where credit's due on, I guess it was the Meatloaf track Bat Out of Hell, which is sort of about him like riding off into the distance on his motorbike and getting in a horrific accident, where Todd Rundgren makes his guitar sound like a car.
Yes, that's cool. But like just stock car sounds, I don't need that. Nobody needs that. It's so stupid. This is like entering into Cars Are Cars territory.
I don't think anyone needs this song.
Just to get back to it, we are like less than 5 minutes into the album when this song shows up. This is a bury it at like 7 or 8 song at best.
Yeah, that's the weirdest part of it, for sure, is the sequencing.
Well, maybe that's my problem, because I listened to this album twice, like start to finish, uninterrupted. And then I listened to it like 4 or 5 times. And a lot of times, like, I get to the song, I'm like, I'm losing my mind. I'm listening to it.
Those are rookie numbers. You got to pump that up, man. Adam's rocking like 15 listens.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's a good question I should have asked. Like, Rob gave me the primer on what I should do, but like.
Yeah, I didn't read that, though.
Let's move on to the next song on our list, which is
on this song.
I was going to say bass getting some licks, bro.
Like out of control hot bass. This is definitely, you know, John Deacon wrote the song, but you can definitely tell that he put all that he had into this. This is a fucking banger of songs.
This is a good song.
This is a great song. I love this one.
Also, not really that rock and roll to write like a sappy love song about your wife, but it really fucking works. It really works well. Like I would have liked the backstory to be like it was about the 17-year-old groupie that he was dating at the time or something like that. But no, it's just about his wife. It's a guy with a normal, happy, functioning relationship. All right.
You wish it was about one of those fat bottom girls?
The Wurlitzer tone on its own is pretty iconic too.
But he's playing that too. That's a John Deacon. It's one of his tunes. He's playing it. Apparently Freddie Mercury did not like the Wurlitzer, and whenever they did this live, he insisted on playing it on piano himself, which I guess made sense. You still need Deacon to be playing bass, but he didn't like the sound. It was also sort of new-ish around that time.
It's a little close to a synthesizer.
Yeah.
Not really.
It's adjacent.
It sounds like the speaker's got a rip in it or something. When he's hitting those low notes, there's a lot of buzz on that.
It's extra distorted for sure, yeah.
Yeah, this song is also everywhere. In fact, when I was going through the exercise this week of listening to this record, I had to go to Lowe's for some reason, and this song was on in my car. I get out, I walk in, and the song is fucking on the speakers in Lowe's. So it's cool. It's sappy. It shouldn't work. It kind of doesn't belong on this album, but I think it's a pretty good song.
Well, I also say for such an album that has so much potential overindulgence on it, they're showing some nice restraint by using the guitar pretty sparingly.
Yeah.
Maybe Brian May was having like a horrible relationship with his wife at the time. He's like, I am not signing on to this shit. I can't stand that bitch.
Well, it's nice and straightforward and playful. And unlike some of the other songs, it's just like easy. It's just like, it's very easy on your ears to listen to. And maybe that's why it's like less challenging. of a song.
It definitely sounds like a single, even removed from knowing that it's a hit.
Yeah, you're not walking into Lowe's and hearing Prophet Song on the fucking speakers there, you know?
Kind of reminded me of what I like about Belle and Sebastian in a way, where it's just like really playful and just like, hey, let's all just be happy here.
That's a good touchstone. It's got that bouncy rhythm to it as well.
All right. Let's move things along here to the next song on the list, which is 39.
Don't recall ever hearing this before. I know it passed my ears, but I didn't know it. And it's my find of the week. I can't say it's the best song on the album, but it's definitely the best non-Freddie song.
This comes in with that like traditional feel. This could be like a Welsh traditional song or something like that. And not to keep glazing John Deacon here, but like the fact that Brian May suggested as a joke that he should play the upright bass on this song, and then like a week later he shows up at the studio having purchased an upright bass, not knowing how to play it, and can then play this performance, like that's fucking impressive. There's a lot of overlap between the upright and the electric bass, but they are two very different animals, and he puts a pretty solid fucking track together.
You forgot the part where Brian May berated him for not building it himself.
He didn't find it in a dumpster.
Yeah, it feels like it's perfect for the first song of the encore. They come out, they kind of do an acoustic-y thing, and then they end the night with a rocker. Be great.
But why does this song have that extra 14 seconds at the end? They had a perfect ending to the song where they even bust out the cool lines of like, all your letters in the sand cannot heal me like your hand, for my life is still ahead. Pity me. And the song ends. And then a guitar comes into the left channel for no reason, and they do like almost nothing for 14 seconds, and then that's the end of the song. Like, why didn't you just end the song right there? It was a perfect ending.
Oh, those 40,000 pounds aren't going to spend themselves.
I guess so, but it just like that's one of those. That was the one thing on this album I was like, you really fumbled. I'm a big fan of like endings that seem very purposeful. And this just seemed like not a very purposeful ending. If you were going to write this ending, why would you write? And then we're going to come back in with just like a little half-assed guitar for 14 seconds. Like just end it on a nice punch in the gut line and then be done with it.
I like this one also because it's the only version, I think, on the record where you get a very nice version of vocal harmony that's not Freddie Mercury dominated.
Roger Taylor's vocals on this this is where his high, obviously he does great on Bohemian Rhapsody, but I think his high harmonies on this really make a song in a lot of ways. I think it's a cool showcase. It doesn't sound like Queen.
It sounds more like Dr. Dog or something.
Yeah.
Don't speak of Dr. Dog without Phil here. Come on. If I have a complaint about this album, it's that the songs are a bit disparate and you never really get to settle into one type of feel. And this is an example of that, but I think it's a solid track.
I agree. You get pushed and pulled a lot listening to this. It's not a chill experience. It kind of demands your attention because it's constantly pulling you in different genre directions.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of why did they make that choice in the song, let's go to our next. People always shit on Fish for their weird vocal jams, but at least they had the decency to not take that shit into the studio.
This song fucking rips, man.
Yeah, I think it rips too. Queen in full yes mode.
This is one of those just because you can doesn't mean you should things. This is, I feel, this is when they're at their most like juvenile. And what I mean is like they're obviously like at their peak of their powers in terms of what they can do. But this is like what an 8-year-old would do, I think, with those powers.
I disagree. Here's I think the problem, and I'll admit I started at this place, but I got past it. You're focusing on the middle section that goes on too long.
Too long, yes.
I agree. It goes on too long, especially the non-harmony version of the weirdness. I mean, it's like a full 2 minutes.
2.5.
2.5 minutes of crazy shit. And I agree, that's very, very excessive. But the first 3 minutes of the tune rock.
They rock real hard. Here's what I love about this song. It comes in with the acoustic guitar, and it gives you this like feeling like Green Sleeves or something like that. Just a very old-timey like bard could be singing it. And then they basically just bring the distortion and the drums in, and they give you this like proggy rock version of it. And you're kind of like, oh, wait, I get that old-timey like minstrel music actually does kind of sound like prog when you just throw some distortion on it. Fucking great.
I'll admit that I've been softened up by a close listen to Close to the Edge by Yes, I think earlier this year, maybe it was last year, I can't quite remember, where I was really blown away by that. So maybe my prog era is back, but I agree. And just to cite a timestamp, Tom, when they hit that key change at 240, that Adam and Marty could come together.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a lot of them. That vocal breakdown, which again, I agree, is about a minute, maybe to a minute and a half too long. But listening to this, I think that what I hear is them falling in love with the new technology a little too much, because that delay technology that he was using to make the around sound was like something relatively new. And I think they just fell in love with that technology. And it sounds really dated now when you hear it. You're like, I can do that on my fucking iPhone. Like, that's super easy. But at the time, I think it was like kind of a new and interesting thing. And he does use it to good effect.
Recording the song, they're doing that part. They go back to the booth to listen to it. Are they laughing, or are they like just as intently focused as they likely were on Bohemian Rhapsody?
I think they're just fucking collapsed in a heap from exhaustion.
I would be willing to bet that during that particular phase of the recording, it was just Freddie and the engineer. Nobody else was there, because it's just him. It's just him doing all those vocals, right? So it's like nobody else is there. And then he delivers a final product to them, and they're probably like, you put a lot of work into this. There's a cool technology to it. It has a little bit of like the storyline kind of wraps around where he's like, listen to the wise man, and at the end, listen to the madman. Like, it fits, but is very overindulgent. But you could say that about a lot of this album. It's very overindulgent.
I think maybe another reason it stands out to give it a little more of a complainy feel is because it is on the same record as Bohemian Rhapsody, which is also a highly daring and experimental track that just knocks it out of the park.
Oh yeah, my first note for this one is like, oh, it's that super long song on A Night at the Opera with tons of Freddie and a harmony that goes to weird places you wouldn't expect and has a big harmony breakdown. No, it's the other one on this album, right? Like,
right.
That's fair. You got to take the swings. Yeah.
I'm more with John on this one. I think it's a spectacle, and it's an achievement, and it makes great use of the studio effects. The vocal part, again, I invoked Fish earlier. It's more structured than a Fish vocal jam, but it's everything I hate about nonsense vocals. And I do think that when you think of Bohemian Rhapsody, someone made the comment earlier that, it doesn't feel like it's 6 minutes. It feels like it goes quick. To me, this felt like it took forever. And I felt every second of the 8 minutes on this track, personally.
I'm pretty positive, but I agree it's too long.
Well, speaking of which, I know we've talked about the song quite a bit already, but let's kick it over to our last track on the focus list, which is Bohemian Rhapsody.
It's pristine. This is experimentation gone insanely right. It is the most unlikely hit of all time, I would say. It's the bar that all bands that are doing experimental tracks are shooting for and missing almost 100% of the time.
yes, but also because what is actually pulled off here is insanely difficult. All of those vocal takes are so fucking perfect. And to have them all layered on top of each other, I was blown away. I've listened to the song like 1,000 times, and I found new background harmonies that I'd never heard before. It's like, how many fucking harmonies are you putting on this song? It's so out of control, and it's so playful. Like, this is one of those ones, John, where that they were like, yeah, this is a little fucking Scaramouche, can you do the fun? Like, that's fucking ridiculous, but it's so good.
But here's what it does. It's not just production layered. It's rhythmically dense, and it is chordally dense. And this is a wild ride of modulations, borrowed chords, and in the absence of Phil, fellas, I felt someone should spiral about it just a little bit. So maybe you can give me the floor. The intro is in G minor, but it uses the major 4 minor for switch up, the pro songwriting move that we have talked about. The first verse, the Mama I Just Killed Him In, swaps up to the relative major key of B flat. Simple enough. But then the next part, which maybe you could call the chorus, kicks it up a notch. It jumps up a 5th. Now we're in E flat. Then all that repeats. Then the operatic part somehow lands in A major, a flat 5th away from the key you were just in. That whole section eventually lands a whole step up in B, but there's a whole chromatic thing going on. Like, sprinkled throughout. You have tritone substitutions. You have every chord in the book. They're all there.
And it all works. Like, if you would not think that there is that much weirdness going on because it all gels together so well.
Correct.
They don't linger. They don't linger on any one part.
No.
They're not indulging in it. They're just, everything seems to serve a purpose and they move along.
Yeah, I feel like you can't do, it's like a Jenga thing. Like if you took out one piece of this, I feel like it could topple. Everything is so purposeful. And interestingly, though, those three parts, I mean, I think a lot of songs are like this, especially songs that we've covered on here and probably songs that we've written where these were meant to be, or these were originally three separate things that were not meant to get stitched together. And I think Freddie had been kind of fucking with these over the years and, you know, finally put them together. But they always referred to this before it even had a name. They would just call it Freddie's thing. You know, he'd be like, oh, I'm working on this thing. They'd be like, oh, here's Freddie's thing again. And then finally, when they heard it all, realized we're like, oh, yeah, that's great.
You blew by it in the story a little bit, Allan, but it was a hit when it came out. And then 15, 17 years later, when Wayne's World came out, it was a hit again. It charted again. And I think it even charted higher than the first time.
You know, dude, I know it's a cliche, but every single time that fucking rockin' part kicks in, I like involuntarily started headbanging.
If you're not headbanging, you're not alive at that part.
Yeah. One of the 20 parts that are in this song, I would have just repeated that the entire time. Like, I would not have been able to be like, let's just get off of that. We're going to move past it. We talked about Pink Floyd having patience. They just will like sit on a part forever. This is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where it is like, I got a bunch of good parts, but I'm never giving them back to you again. You just get it for a short period of time, and then we're on to the next thing. And often that doesn't work at all, but it works so well here.
And that means the construction of seamless transitions through series of chords, sometimes of which are not being played, they're only being sung, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. And you know from karaoke is that the rhythm is really confusing and weird. And they I didn't do a rhythmic breakdown, but it's almost impossible to get it right because it's certainly not sticking to one rhythm.
Rob, do you remember the Beta Breakers where we had our flag and acoustic guitar? We were marching through there and we did many renditions of this song. And then at one point, I believe you were so drunk you fell down and broke my acoustic guitar.
Yes, I remember.
And then, you know, they end the album on My Country 'Tis of Thee. Good for them. That's just a fuck you to all of England. That's our song now.
Yeah. This gets listed, rightfully so, I think, on many reader polls and lists as the best rock song, if you want to call it that, like of all time. Like it's of that ilk. And if you have time, I mean, if you've listened to 2 hours of this, you definitely have time. Go check out Rick Beato's breakdown of this song. You know, he does his What Makes a Song Great or something like that, where he does a 40-minute breakdown of this song. And it's excellent. He touches on so many different things that, again, Tom, to your point of shit that new things you hear every time you listen to it. And even just other things that you've heard a million times, even when it breaks down into the dun, 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 dun. I mean, Freddie is just playing that like a metronome almost. I mean, he is just locked in. It's such a simple part, but everything really works. It's just, it's an incredible song.
There's no other song that I can think of that sounds like this. Oftentimes I will ding like a record for that and be like, this seems like a musical cul-de-sac. Like they didn't lead to a whole lot of other stuff, but like, I feel like you hear this and you're like, well, that's just the best version of that that's ever going to be. So, okay, why would I even try to do something that's even in that same vein? It's already been done to perfection.
Yeah. And I know I'm saying it again and again. I sound like a broken record, but it's been normalized through your thousands of times hearing it, but it's really weird.
It is. And to your point about Wayne's World, we're so long into this, I can't remember if I made this point earlier or not, but Mike Myers was actually saying when he did Wayne's World, he wanted that scene to be Bohemian Rhapsody, but that movie came out, I think, in like 91 or something, and the producers were hell-bent on that being a Guns N' Roses song that they were kind of getting down to in a car, and he's like, no, it has to be the song. And they were like, okay, whatever. And he was so right. Like, can you imagine that being any other song than Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah. Wayne's World is actually like a really good touchstone for this because like it's silly. It's a good movie, but it's also silly. And like, this is a great song, but it's very silly. Very silly. You couldn't have. Yeah.
He also threaded the needle because that could have gone really bad. That could have been a total train wreck.
Yes.
Well, I didn't even mean just like spoiling the song and like just not doing it. If it didn't go well, like you're tarnishing this like, jewel of a song. Pretty frustrating.
Yeah, but it effectively introduced us to it, a new generation of listeners.
Yeah. And that song is made for like sillily mouthing along to the parts with your friends in the car while you're fucking high, like that's perfect. Yeah.
That's why it's a part of almost every karaoke night I've ever been to.
Even though it's remarkably hard to sing.
Oh, totally.
No one can sing it. No, literally no one except Freddie Mercury.
Did they play it live regularly? I guess they had to, right?
They did.
They could not hit every part of it. When they did Live Aid, I guess they only had 20 minutes or so for that set, but they did like a truncated version. It never sounded as good, but how could it?
Yeah. There's no way.
Yeah. And I think the last thing we didn't touch on, which I don't have like a lot of new information on, but I do think it's worth mentioning the video for this, which a lot of people consider like the first music video.
Oh, yeah.
People were doing this kind of thing before, but that was sort of a pioneered music as a video form. And apparently, I don't believe this. This might have just been tongue in cheek, but Freddie Mercury claims that they only made the video because they did not want to go back on Top of the Pops, because when they had done that a few years before, they had to lip sync and it was just a terrible experience. I think they lied and said that they had to tour and so they weren't available to do it. So they're like, here's a music video instead. So it was meant to be this like kind of cast off thing, but that video was pretty iconic. I think
it has some twists and turns in it at a time when bands would make promotional videos, but it would just be like a straight shot of them playing usually, and that this actually has some filmic elements to
Absolutely. And recreating the Queen 2 cover with just the four of them with the lights just on their faces and the black background, which is like an iconic image at this point. I know that image from the Bohemian Rhapsody video, not from the Queen 2 album cover, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen the video like on its own. I've only seen the Wayne's World. When MTV had the Wayne's World, like they would play the song and there would be clips of Wayne's World. And the video.
Well, didn't MTV do a version where they were like intersplicing the Wayne's World footage? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I thought that they made that just for that time as well. Like they were stitching stuff together, but it turned out that they actually did a video for this back in the 70s, which was kind of crazy.
Right. Long before MTV, or there was really a place for it, right?
Exactly. Speaking of long drawn out affairs, we find ourselves at that exact point at this level in the show. So I think it's time for us to render our verdict on whether this album belongs on the list of albums you must hear before you die. So let's go around the horn and levy an opinion. Let's start with Rob. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an easy yes for me. I love it when weird and ambitious wins. And the fact that this not only is so wild and over the top and has so much variety, it feels like a real jewel of the 70s to me. If you haven't heard it, I get why it's not perfect. I get why people will call it overindulgent, but it wins the day for me easily. There's just so much to like here. So yes.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I also agree. This is a pretty easy yes for me. In 1975, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff that sounded like this. And then flash forward to 2026, there's not a whole lot of stuff that sounds like this. It really does have this oddly unique vibe to it. And I know that I have had the criteria of like, I assume you've heard the hits, but like, do you need to hear everything else? And there's enough weird and cool experimentation on this that yes, I do think you need to hear everything else. But I might even just make the exception and say that like, if Bohemian Rhapsody is on the album, I don't give a shit what the fuck else is on there. You still need to listen to that album in its entirety before you die. So there you go.
Tom's softening his stance after 5 years.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that is a rarity.
Just for this song.
All right. John, what do you think?
I will say this has been quite a journey going on a tour of this record with you gentlemen. And it's hard for me because it's unlikely I'm going to play this record again. I'm not going to like hit play on track one and just like listen. But that being said, sort of to Tom's point, it's hard for me to come on the show for the first time and say no to a record that has Bohemian Rhapsody on it.
Yeah, we'll bring you on for Kid Rock next time.
Yeah. So I will hesitantly vote yes.
Excellent. Well, I'll just go ahead and make it a clean sweep. I mean, this is iconic. It's canon. It's sort of unimpeachable in a classic sense. I do think if you took Bohemian Rhapsody off, it becomes a little bit more of a toss-up, but I always appreciate the context that goes into things like this. I think it's rare when you get a chance to hear a band truly make what they want to make without a lot of other forces happening. And this was, truly Freddie's vision and the rest of the guys. I think it's a pretty easy yes. So clean sweep. Queen, you did it. We'll see how you do if we're somehow still doing this when we get to the other albums on the list. But a clean sweep. Well done, Queen. I think next it's time to move over and see what we have in the old mailbag. Rob, what have people been sending our way?
Yeah, I got some good stuff here. But first, I just want to thank our very special guest, Johnny. Thanks for coming on the show, buddy. Great to see you. Hope to have you back soon. Great to see your face.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I feel honored. And thank you, listeners, for listening to me prattle on about topics I do not know much about.
Indeed. All right, let's get to that old mailbag. So first we have one. Actually, I've done something handy for you, which is I've wrapped up some of our Billy Joel, The Stranger feedback. Now, sadly, Phil, who hosted that episode, is not here, but nonetheless, we continue. First, we have a missive from Mark from Rhode Island. He writes, "Dear complainers, I too am a complainer. In fact, I've been complaining since at least 1964, when I can still recall my friend Lionel getting mad at me for changing the station on my radio after a cheesy second-tier Hot Rod song called GTO came on. He said, 'What'd you turn that off for? I like little GTO. It's just like the Beach Boys.' First of all, I said, it's called GTO, you fucking idiot. Second, that's like saying Herman's Hermits are just like the Beatles. I bring this to you to say that Billy Joel is not like Bruce Springsteen.
I disagree, but let's go.
Not even close.
Oh, I know why Rob picked this one.
Now look, I admit the man can craft a good pop tune, but he has no soul, no integrity, no vision, no gravitas. He's less than the sum of his parts. He's not a creator, but an imitator. He's Paul Simon without the brains, Elton John without half the heart, Cat Stevens without the depth, McCartney with a quarter of the charm. He's vanilla."
Wow.
Well, this guy's been complaining since 65. I can't go up against that.
He really set the table up there.
He's really yelling at Allan specifically. That's what I'm waiting for Allan's response here. He closes out by saying, "I will begrudgingly agree that at his best, Billy Joel's best, that is, he can evoke a certain middle-class authenticity, but maybe that's because deep down he knows he's average."
Go back and listen to Glory Days and come back to me and show me what gravitas are in that show.
Oh, good point. Citing a single song from one of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century's catalog.
Dude, half that shit is, I knew a guy in Jersey and we played baseball once. And
yet you love The Stranger, Allan. You have to live with that. You're the one that has to go to sleep tonight knowing that. He closes by saying, all complaining aside, as a music fanatic, a record collector, and a singer who's as old as rock and roll itself, I gotta say 1001 Album Complaints is the best music podcast on earth, hands down.
Well, that I can get down with.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we got one more here about Billy Joel. This is Bill from New Hope, Pennsylvania, writing, "In a careful listen, you will hear a bottle of whites, a bottle of red. It's whites, not white. The reference is to amphetamines. Same usage you hear in other songs from the period. I realize that even Google doesn't seem to understand this, but having lived through this time period, when this song came out, that's how it was heard and understood."
Damn, if you're downing a whole bottle of whites, that's...
So you're taking speed at a restaurant? Because, that doesn't seem like what you do before you want to eat.
It's an Italian restaurant in Jersey. You gotta feed the monkey.
I don't know. I've literally always turned the song off before he even got to the end of that word, so I was leaving it to you guys to comment.
It's the first line of the song.
Exactly. And he closes by saying, "Lastly, all props to Rob's dad, who clearly has impeccable taste. Rob knew Return to the Grievous Angel by Graham Parsons, but not The Stranger. Well done, Rob's dad.
John, can you tell Rob is the one who curates these emails before he brings them to us?
That's what the people are saying, guys. And if you want to tell us something, you want to glaze me on so I can put this on the air, send it on over to 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. Love it. Keep those emails coming. And then with that, let's kick it over to Tom to give us our homework assignment for this week. What else are we going to spend untold hours listening to in the days to come?
Well, I have given the Albinator the week off because we are officially at the third of our 3 episodes where we have a listener pick that we are going to be presenting next week. You all remember buying a copy of Stay Puffed by the Chop entered you into a raffle to win a chance to pick the album and come on our show. And listener Logan had won that contest, and he picked a near and dear to our, born in the early 80s hearts pop punk album, Dookie by Green Day. And so next week, we're going to be talking Dookie by Green Day, and I am fucking stoked as hell for this. These are just like poppy, fucking great irreverent songs.
I do, in fact, have the time to listen to him whine.
There we go. And you all have the time to listen to us whine if you're listening to this far into the show. So thank you very much.
That was on mad repeat back in 94, whenever that came out with. So excellent. Well, sounds like a good time in store this week. And thanks again, John. This was a great time. Hope to have you on again at some point soon. And with that, for 1001 Album Complaints, I have been Allan.
I've been Rob.
I've been Tom.
I've been John. I didn't know we were doing this.
We're doing it, baby. Boosh, 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 boosh.